Welcome back to my channel. My name is Olive, and today you are joining me for my first ever podcast, so Podcast with Olive. So just for a little bit of background, in lockdown of 2020 and 2021, I used to do a podcast series with my friend Grace. It was called the Chaturanga Podcast, and it was purely on Spotify. The first 10 episodes of season 1 was mainly talking about our sort of yoga journey, and then season 2 we started interacting with other coaches and other movement guests, and it was a really fun way to get to know a little bit more about them. So I kind of wanted to continue that on my YouTube channel and chat to a bunch of my friends who are all different movement coaches from a host of different backgrounds, and just mainly get to learn a little bit more about themselves and their stories. So today I have the wonderful Holly with me, who is a yoga teacher as well here in Brighton. And yeah, hello.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure.
I am honoured to be on your podcast.
It's an absolute joy. I have so much that I want to learn from you and hear about your stories, because this is perhaps what our fourth time hanging out.
Yeah.
Is
that it? It feels like more times.
Yeah, well that's it. I feel like we've had this past life kind of interaction before, or when you just get to know someone and you're like, yeah, same kind of page. So yeah, it is a wild time.
It is. And I remember meeting you that first night. Actually, it was I think it was the Humankind work party, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I just remember having this feeling of, I really love her. She's great. Her energy's great.
Yeah, man.
Just everything about you that evening. I remember, you're my friend. We're friends now.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen to me very often. I can be quite introverted and I think present as if my walls are up, which I guess they can be at times. So when I have that immediate connection with somebody, I'm like, right, let's see what this is all about.
Yeah, that's interesting. So kind of digressing slightly, you say that you're naturally quite introverted. So when it comes to your teaching, how do you feel like you present yourself? Do you feel more extroverted, like a different version of you?
I guess, there's something that comes out in that space. I always feel, I don't feel like a teacher, but more as a conduit. And I've been very fortunate over the years to have learned from some great teachers, and all the information is there. It's inside of me. So when you go into a class, it's just kind of feeling centered and allowing what is in there to flow through. And I don't want to use the word performative, but I feel like teaching can sometimes be like that. You kind of have your script, what you're saying to explain certain postures. But also, I mean, in my practice and what I usually teach, I gravitate to slower, more meditative practices, which is much more in line with my personality. And then it's something else. So it's almost like separate to yourself, like who you present, or how you are in the world day to day, like the different masks we wear in comparison to just tuning in and kind of reflecting it in other people as well, and allowing them to feel that that's kind of beyond the ego, beyond the masks we wear.
That's so interesting. So can you talk a little bit more about how you got to where you are in terms of your teaching and I guess your journey there?
So I guess I always was a spiritual person. I wasn't raised religious or anything like that, but I always remember having this strong connection to God, and that's the word that I would use internally as a child, to have these moments of really connecting to something beyond myself. When I was 20, I left the UK, and by that point I was already quite seriously into drugs and alcohol. And I left the UK to kind of escape that, but I wound up in Southeast Asia.
Okay.
We were buying opiates from the pharmacy and taking a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol. I overdosed once in Bangkok, and then years later in Sydney I overdosed again. And that was like a real shift moment. I thought I need to stop doing this. I need to stop doing this to myself. Going through these cycles, I'm going to end up dead. So I then went back to Asia and spent some time in Borneo and Indonesia, and then landed in India, and that was a great moment. Of all the traveling I'd done, I was completely surprised and shifted again through the experience of going to India. And I wound up in Varanasi, and yoga found me on a rooftop there. I think I was looking for hash or something, and the guy that ran the guest house was like, this yoga teacher, he's really good, he's here now, like, you must do a class. I was like, oh, fine, but can I get some hash after? So yes. And I'd done the class, and this guy Shiva Guru Varanasi, he was like one of those people that you see, one of the yogis that he was old, but I mean the things he could do with his body, he had advanced asana practice, but he was one of those characters that you look at and you're like, how old are you actually? Are you like in your 60s and looking fabulous, or are you like 100 and something? It was one of those kinds of characters. And that was it. And then was born my yearly pilgrimage to India. I'd go and spend time there and practice. I'd done my teacher training in India. I've done a lot of Iyengar yoga for years, and Hatha. And then travelled the world and taught yoga, Mexico, Philippines, Canada, which has been amazing. And I guess, as we're constantly evolving as people, so does our practice, so does how we offer what it is we're offering. And I've definitely moved into a more, slower practice now, slower style of teaching. It's nice to cover more dynamic classes. It kind of pushes me out of my new comfort zone. But I like the restorative practices.
And with your like yearly pilgrimage to India, what would you do like in the time in between then? Would you come back to the UK and teach, or would you continue travelling? So I there was a point where I was between the UK and India, and I would come back here. I'd work as a yoga teacher, a gardener and a massage therapist. But I would hire out a community centre, or like £10 an hour, and just advertise it to the local community. And it was nice. And then I moved out to the Philippines for a bit, and taught there, which was beautiful. Like teaching in a tree, in the trees. This nice like decking that looked out over the water. And it's just like the sounds of the jungles. It was such a beautiful experience. It's kind of hard to keep track of where the road has led and all the adventures. That's incredible. So I guess the other question that I wanted to kind of touch on was, did you notice a big difference between practicing and teaching yoga in India and then bringing it to the Western world and teaching it here? I think there's a massive difference just straight away in how yoga is, what yoga is. When you're in India, very, it's arisen out of Hinduism, the Vedas, the Bhagavad Gita, and to the culture there, it's that tuning your individual consciousness with that of higher consciousness. Call it God, call it whatever you want. Whereas here, it's a strange one to kind of ascertain what yoga is, what it has become, how people perceive it. I think there's so much noise. It's become a massive industry now, it's a huge industry, which is ironic almost. But I do love that straight away in India, it's we're doing this because we want liberation from the cycles of samskara and karma, and this is, it's even down to the science of what is happening in your energetic channels, what's going on with the body, and the powers that you can kind of attain as a human. That's probably not a great way to put the sentence, but
vibhutis, you know, how we can communicate telepathically, some of the teleportation stuff, the more magical elements of what can be accessed through yoga is very kind of, it's black and white fact out there, you know, whereas to introduce these ideas in the West, I think it takes a little bit more tiptoeing around it, or knowing your audience to a certain degree. I mean, it's great teaching in Kemp Town. It's such an open-minded, amazing community. But when I taught in my hometown in Bracknell, you know, kind of trying to introduce some of these more esoteric ideas would go down like a lead balloon. Sometimes you'd have to be really pretty cautious.
Yeah, for sure. And like, I can imagine as well it differs like place to place within like the West and within the UK particularly. Like, we are quite liberal down here in Brighton, but I've had experiences when I used to teach a bunch of like community classes out on the lawns. So in Brighton we've got an area like where it's the lawns, and then you've got the promenade and then the beach, so a lot of like tourists kind of like walk up and down. And I remember teaching like 20 people outside, and then I heard like a group of like northerners walk past and just have like little I don't want to say insults, but little like quips about what we were doing, and kind of being like, oh, that's so weird, like what is going on. And it's just like people's perception of yoga even within the UK is so vastly different. Because I think you're right, like there is still so much noise that exists around it. People are still quite overwhelmed and perhaps confused as to what it is. Like, is it a fitness class? Is it a wellness class? Is it a class just for the wealthy, or just for like one particular body type or gender? And there's not, social media doesn't help, but it also can. So my internal dialogue is very confused sometimes with it. And then on the one hand, I flip between being like, I love being able to provide this practice to so many different people, as many different people as I can, because it's given so much to me. But then I swing to the other end of the pendulum, and it's like, should I be making money out of something like that's so ancient? This is where my mind is.
It's hard, isn't it? And I've definitely had that conflict over the years. And it's hard. And I remember a teacher I had who's brilliant. He's brilliant. He's in his 70s, you know, he's really incredible yogi. But he said to me, you know, money is just energy. You need to think of it as energy. And if you're offering something, then you should, you know, there should be that cycle. But as long, I feel like intention is everything. And if you're going into it with the intention of purely making money or having your own successes, and you know that's totally missing the point. You're there to offer something and to help others, and if you're offering something that is great and beneficial to others, then there's no reason why there shouldn't be that cycle. But it's like you know, some of the old gurus would say, if you only are practicing asana and not the other limbs of yoga, then you're going to create imbalance in your body, and it's never going to bear fruit. If you're doing asana just to, you know, affect the physical body and to look a certain way, and it's never going to bear fruit. I feel it's the same with, you know, making money within the yoga world, because whether we like it or not, it's the landscape of the world we exist in. You know, we have to make money, we have to survive in this world. But intention, I feel, and being genuine, authentic, because it's such a powerful practice. It really is. 100%. It literally saved my life. You know,
So how old were you when yoga found you?
23.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, wow. So
23.
Quite an intense few years before you found it.
Yeah, well, about 6 years. Yeah, I was 17 when we were doing cocaine at the school gates, you know, and then that continued, and it was that point of, okay, I need to bolt, I need to get out of here. I wasn't in a place to address what was going on internally, and the only way I could figure to make a big change was to physically move myself, you know, and I'd done that many times, and people say it's running away, but then it's like you give yourself what you need in the moment, and if you need to move, then move. But no, it's No, it's been incredible, but it was interesting when I did first start that yoga journey and that spiritual awakening or whatever you want to say. There was so much that I suppressed from my from childhood, from those years of real heavy active addiction and the things you do in that space. So there was lots of guilt and shame and all the rest of it. And I pushed it down in this little box and kind of shut. I was like, it's fine.
So good.
And then I remember being on a bus in Rajasthan, and I looked out the window and I saw a sign that said John Innerwear, Jon, and my friend John, John, that I met in Indonesia. I was like, oh, John, I must message him. So I messaged John, and long story short, I ended up going out to meet him in Arizona. My path meandered me there. But before I'd left India, I went to this Tibetan singing bowl workshop, and I was like, you can't go and see John in Arizona. That's totally mental, was kind of my thought. And then during that workshop, I went into that kind of deep meditative space, and it was all vibration and loveliness. And from that space, whatever spirit, whatever you want to call it, communicated, it's like the land of Arizona is going to show you something. So off I went, and through some strange turn of events, I ended up in Sedona outside of a TED talk, and this TED talk was about being inspired. And I met two shamans there, and they invited me for a ceremony. Smoke changa, which the active ingredient is DMT. So ceremony was wild. Left the body twice, which was a whole thing in itself, obviously. But then that night I kind of had the shadow aspect to the experience, and it was like this hand reached down inside of me and opened the trap door.
Oh, really?
And in an instant, everything I'd suppressed over my years of what I thought doing the work was handed to me, and I felt everything in a moment. And I was supposed to wake up in the morning and have a sit down with the shaman and kind of integrate some of the experience and talk about it all. I jumped in my Jeep and drove, but I just drove, I ran away, classic me. I drove across Arizona, Nevada, into California in a day, just with all of this stuff going on. And then I flew to the Philippines to work as a yoga teacher.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it was like a beautiful experience. But there was, here, have this, do the work now.
Yeah, so how did you find like unpacking all of that? Was it over the next couple months that you did, or? Years,
Yeah, it's funny, when I arrived in the Philippines, there were storms, and they were like, oh, it's a tropical depression. I was like, no shit. I'm depressed as well, so
it's a reflection of how I'm feeling right now.
My vibhutis are so powerful, I'm controlling the weather. What are you talking about? I love it. So no, it was lovely, and John was there with me. He was teaching diving, and I was teaching yoga. It was really amazing. And then I went off to Nepal and walked in the Himalayas, and that was really healing. And then back to India and done Vipassana and spent some time there. And Vipassana was great, and probably one of the best experiences of my life, which is...
How long was your Vipassana?
10 days.
Okay,
just to be silent with self for all that time. And the things that come up in the body, I had been with the Iyengar teacher for a month before the Vipassana in Goa, so it's like boiling hot, beautiful, love the heat, but doing really intense. Alpesh is really strict, like gets the bamboo out, open chest, open the front. But I was like a little noodle after that month, and I thought, wow, going to sit in this air-conditioned hall for 8 to 10 hours of meditation a day, I thought, I wonder if I'm going to leave feeling like the Tin Woman or something, really stiff. But actually, I'd never felt like that in my life, just because it's the mind, all the work you're doing internally, the meditation, it's just...
so are you guided at all in your Vipassana? So
the guy Goenka, who kind of reintroduced Gautama Buddha's teachings, he's dead now, but all of the teachings are recorded, so it's quite funny.
Yeah.
And he's got a very distinctive, unique voice, and it's great. And then every night you watch a video that goes into the teachings, the practice. They talk about subatomic particles. There's a lot of that in it. How everything is a state of vibration, and that's what we're doing in meditation. We're not doing, but observing. Observe. There's nothing to do. There's no judgment. We're just watching. To the point, the Vipassana technique, you're supposed to then feel yourself as waveform, inseparable to everything externally and vastly internally as well. I did have a moment, I think, on the 8th day where I felt like I just kind of cascaded backwards into this void, but not in a bad sense, and that it was going eternally inwards and outwards. It was just
Was that void that you had opened up when you had your DMT experience?
Potentially. I'd never thought of it like that. It might have been.
And you did your Vipassana with other people, right? There were other people there. Did you feel connected to them in any kind of way? Because obviously there's no talk, there's no communication, so... Yeah.
You're not even supposed to look at people, but I couldn't help myself. I'm just walking around smiling at everyone, so I was connecting with people all the time. And funnily enough, as I pulled up to the centre, I was like, I wonder what amazing souls are going to be here at the same time. And as I had that thought, I looked up and there was this woman determinedly walking into the centre, and we got chatting before the course started. Her name's Rachel, she's from Australia. And they'd overbooked the course, so they put us in a room together for the first few days, and we had to break silence because I kept locking Rachel in the room in the morning. It locked from the outside, and in a daze at 4 a.m. I just kept so we had to break silence. But after Vipassana, Rachel and I had booked the same flight to Colombo a day apart, before ever meeting. So then we travelled Sri Lanka together, and Rach moved to LA. Then I moved over to Canada and spent lots of time hopping in and out of LA and spending time with Rachel. And she's powerful manifester. We were in this little homestay in Sri Lanka. She's like, right, need a high flying job. I want to live in Venice Beach, on the water. And the internet was in and out. There was some kind of revolution going on in Sri Lanka at that time. So all the social media was down, email accounts down. And just watching this woman just in this little homestay, all of that turmoil going on around, she's just like, this is my dream, create it.
Wow.
So she's amazing person.
It's interesting that you obviously experienced that with her, because when I look at you, that's what I get from you. I see you as someone who goes out and just experiences so many different things, so many paths, and I find it so interesting. And I think that first time we actually sat down and had a proper chat outside of work, outside of a work social situation, I left that conversation feeling I want to do what Holly does. But it's true though, you said to me earlier, you feel when we interact it's this dream creation phase, and I get that from you as well, which is I think why we connected so easily, so readily. I'm because there's something that you bring up in me.
It's that Cancer Scorpio thing we got going on, the dreamy, watery, emotional energy.
100%. I just want to support and nurture one another.
I remember you saying about Scorpios being quite fiercely protective of Cancers. I thought that makes so much sense.
Makes sense.
Makes sense,
100%. So I want to touch on your experience in Canada. How was it?
Canada was amazing. I love Canada. It's got such a soft spot in my heart. It's just vast wilderness, and bears and wolves and mountain lions and caribou and moose, and you can just drive. You can drive for days and not see another soul, which I love that. I love people, but I also don't I love individual people, but it's collectives, busy places is not such a vibe. But I worked at a ski resort in their accounts department, and I taught yoga in the climbing gym, actually.
Oh,
It'd be
very
like
cool.
40 people would come to
Wow.
the climbing gym, and I mean, nobody had mats.
Yeah,
so it was like
yeah.
pull out the climbing mats and just use what we had.
Nice.
And then I moved up to the Yukon, which is on the Alaskan border, and I dealt blackjack at a casino there, and I also taught yoga.
I love that combo.
Yeah, it was so much fun. It's
Sweet.
real mental exercise, you know.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, it's so. I could really feel my brain as a muscle, and
Yeah.
it getting stronger the more that I was doing
Interesting.
this, you know, because you're calculating all the hands, and then if people want to double down on bets or split, and then you're calculating the winnings. It's such a fast-paced environment. It was great. And by the time it got to September, it was dark outside, because it's the land of the midnight sun up there. So the sun just circles round in the sky. But yeah, by the time September got to close, the Northern Lights were out every night.
No way.
You know, pretty much every
my God,
night.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
And they're something that really make you stop and go, who are we? Where are we? Like,
Yeah.
what is this? Like, what is
Yeah.
going on right now?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That's so fascinating. That's really beautiful as
yeah.
well.
Very blessed.
That's the other thing that I kind of get from you as well. Like, it's very easy, and I think especially coming out of COVID, to kind of remind yourself like what there is out in the world. And outside of Brighton, for me, for a while, the rest of the world felt like quite a scary and overwhelming place, because I was like, I'm very comfortable here. And then just from like, again, conversation with you, it's like, oh, well, there is actually so much to do, there's so much to see, and the world now feels like a less vast and scary place, and more of like, because I've heard different stories from everywhere, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
It's been an interesting kind of like year coming out of those 2 years where everything was very insular,
Yeah.
and now like reminding yourself like, oh yeah, cool, I am an adult,
anything.
I can do
Yes.
anything I want to.
Yeah, literally anything you set your mind to, in a certain amount of reason, I might say.
Yeah.
But I almost had the opposite of that, where I'd lived such this transient life. And after the Yukon, I had a little minivan and drove from the Arctic to Mexico, and then back up to Canada, wild camping, just on the road, you know, axe, make fire, just, yes,
Yeah.
love it. And then I ended up in Pakistan for just the wildest time of life ever.
Please go into it.
Gosh. Yeah, it was just crazy. There was lots of interaction with authorities, being held by the police, like under armed guard, interviews with intelligence services, being a stowaway.
Really?
Yeah, there's something you can sign in Pakistan, or you should sign, called an NOC certificate, or an NOC, which is a no objection certificate, which essentially means you hand your rights over to authorities.
Okay.
I refused to sign one,
Right.
because I thought, well,
Yeah.
no. But essentially that then meant we couldn't stay in a lot of hotels, so we'd end up in like dodgy, like back alley hotels, and then you'd meet interesting characters, and kind of so the cycle would go. I remember meeting this guy in Lahore, and I immediately had bad vibes of him, and I said to my friend Ali, I was like, he's no good. And Ali's like, no, he's fine. I'm like, woman's intuition, I'm telling you. But he invited us for breakfast with him and two business associates that were over from Afghanistan, and the whole thing just felt really shady and weird, and they wanted to take us to Kabul without a trace. Essentially, they wanted to arrange their own private security. They wanted to show us around.
Oh wow.
And my friend Ali was like nodding along, and I thought, I'm not bloody going to Kabul with them, you know, without a trace. And then afterwards, my friend Ali's like panicked. He's like, he wants to kidnap you. I'm like, I told you, he's bad vibes.
Yeah.
Because they were speaking in a language called Pashtun, which Ali speaks in Urdu. It's like very much like India, where Urdu is the national language, and then there's different languages.
Yeah.
So that was all panic stations.
Oh my
but
gosh.
I mean, luckily we weren't stupid enough to take them up on the offer or meet up with them again, but I got really bad food poisoning after that experience.
Oh, really?
Like, horrendous. And all the travel I've done in Asia and India, I'd not been ill like that since I first went. And I mean, I would both ends for days.
Really?
I had to throw up and in a flower pot outside of a mosque in Faisalabad, like really the most conservative place in the world, like outside a mosque, literally. I couldn't even help it. It was awful. But anyway, ended up getting to this village, and I mean, the beautiful thing about being a woman in Pakistan is you can go to women's spaces. I mean, there's lots of other challenges that arise, but I was with the women in the village, and my friend Ali explained what happened, and that he, you know, they'd had bad intentions towards me, and the women said I'd been hexed, essentially.
Really?
Like that there'd been some energetic damage done to me. Whoever had given the breakfast had very bad intention towards me.
Yeah.
And they said all these like lovely little, not mantras, I don't know what you'd call them there, and they rubbed coal all on my face, and it was very sweet.
Like held you and looked after you.
Yeah, and it was beautiful. There was lots of kind of weird and wonderful things like that in Pakistan. I mean, we accidentally took hash to the Indian border, 70 grams of hash. It was a moment of like,
yeah, oh shit.
We had this little car, and in the back seat from the footwell right up to the ceiling, it was just blankets, bags. Ali's mum in the Punjab was like proper Punjabi mummy. It just gave us loads of stuff. So I literally got to the military checkpost, and I got this rock of hash, and I kind of tangled my arms into this blanket and just let go and said, Inshallah. Got out of God's now. Like, oh God. And luckily it was fine, but there were 6 checkposts, you know, and some of them we had to walk away from the car and through full body scanners, other ones there were dogs. By the end of it I thought, oh bloody hell, I'm going to prison in Pakistan. I completely made peace of it. It was so interesting, that internal process. But no, beautiful. And we hitchhiked into the north. I spent 7 nights on top of a truck going up the Karakoram highway into the Himalayas, you know, where you've got massive drops down to the Indus River, and then, you know, you're on these tiny roads. Luckily, the truck that picked us up was carrying grain, so we could roll out the sleeping bags on the back. But it was incredible, and again, it was the only woman on the road, and in the truck convoys and at all these truck stops, so that was really quite something. And then got off in Kashmir and ended up meeting a Sufi, and I stayed with him for a week, and he told me it was my time to go home and be of service to others. Really? And I was like, that's really nice, Graham, but I'm going back to Canada. So I'm going to deal blackjack. Yeah. And then one morning I woke up and I sat bolt upright in bed. And I was travelling with my ex, and I remember kind of like, right, we're over, it's done. I'm going back to England. There had been a lot of tension between us in the trip, but it was just, I'd kind of like, okay, I've reached the end of the line. And within a week I was back in Islamabad and then back in the UK, and then within a week we locked down, and I'd still come back with the intention, right, I'm going to see my family, catch up with friends, and then I'm going back to Canada. Right. And then we locked down. I see. And then my life I felt like a rug had been ripped out from underneath me, being here and kind of living in a house, and so it was so alien to me, you know. And so I struggled for a good year and a bit with my mental health badly. A lot of my issues around addiction kind of reared their ugly head, so to speak. But it was important to see it from new vantage points and kind of do a lot of the work that I'd been avoiding doing every time I came back and hopped away again. I completely lost my practice, any sense of connection I felt. I remember sat at an end of my bed one day just crying, going, I can't feel my connection anymore. You know, because you know when you tap into your practice and you can just... It was like the light had gone out a really bad way. But slowly, so I'd done the work. I'd done quite a lot of work with mushrooms, cleaning my life up, and looking at what needed to be looked at. And I mean, going back to teach yoga again has been so healing for me. And I mean, you know, I'm so grateful to Lou. I say it to her all the time because we knew each other in a very different capacity. You know, we'd met kind of out having wine and, you know, without her ever knowing how I teach or ever kind of experiencing me as a teacher. She was like, yeah, of course. And it's been so paramount to me kind of regaining my strength, my confidence, like having that beautiful community there, all those wonderful people that come to that studio. It's just it's like filled me back up, and I just feel like day by day I'm regaining that strength and I'm ready to
fly again. So what's next for Holly?
So I go to India in December. It's been a while.
For your pilgrimage?
Yeah, my pilgrimage. Got to go on pilgrimage. Yeah. So I'll go. I'm going to spend some time on the beach in Goa, just you know, having like bougie coffee and smoothies and bit of bowls. And then I'll probably do some like mad hitchhike up to Darjeeling and then cross the land border into Nepal, and I'm going to go up to Everest Base Camp.
Amazing. Amazing.
Kind of feels symbolic in a way, like the entire journey so far. Kind of ending this chapter on top of the world. Literally,
I love that.
Literally,
absolutely,
and figuratively as well.
Okay, amazing. And what is this chapter that you're coming towards the conclusion of?
I feel like a lot of shadow work, and also really my recovery from my addiction issues, drugs and alcohol. Because I mean, where it used to be opiates, and I'd drink morphine and be taking tramadol and all sorts of things. It's kind of, over the years, it's really shifted. But I noticed then, getting grounded in the UK, I started drinking, like binge drinking. And I mean, it'd been years since I'd really drank at all. I was prone to take drugs every now and then and smoke a lot of weed, but the drinking, that kind of took me by surprise. And I remember somebody saying to me once, you know, it's not a problem till it's a problem. And I started to notice that there were certain group situations I would go into or places I would go to where I would feel the need that I had to have it.
I see.
And then I could watch these kinds of behaviours, and then how one night drinking where I took it too far would completely destroy my mental health for the next week, and would lead me to eat bad food and to want to smoke weed, and it's kind of that dragon eating its own tail. So
interesting. Do you think that like English drinking culture had anything to do with that?
I mean, I would of course like to blame someone other than myself. I will blame the English drinking culture, but I mean, English drinking culture is just vile. And I mean, I'll go with the, you know, I'll give it my all and go with them sometimes. Not anymore. I'm not drinking anymore.
But it makes it difficult because it's an added like layer on top of everything else.
And it's with everything, isn't it? Like the hen do, stag do's, like a birthday party,
a brunch,
whatever it is, it has to be fueled by alcohol. And so many people I know, they can't open up or chat without it. And I think that's sad.
It was like the biggest culture shock for me moving here from Dubai, because you can drink in Dubai, but that you don't have like pubs or anything. It would only be like if you go to a hotel or you go to a restaurant, you could get alcohol, and it was 21, you know, like the States. So to come here and like everyone would just suggest it as a thing to do, like, you know, when it comes to the weekend, it would always take me by surprise, because I'll be like, but there are other things that we can do and not involve alcohol. And the interactions I've had in the past where like I say that I don't drink and people get slightly offended by it, because whether or not it's confronting or whether or not they see me as boring. And like now I do drink every now and then, but if I'm not drinking, people always refer to my status as a yoga teacher. They're like, oh, you don't drink because you're a yoga teacher. I'm like, no, actually, it's completely entirely different. The two aren't interlinked. Just because there's this one label that you prescribe me doesn't mean that I have to subscribe to it. And it's mind-blowing.
She'd say, I'm just fabulous without it. That's why. It's got nothing to do with anything else.
So true. But labels are so, again, we've had this conversation briefly before, they can be beneficial, but they can also be so stifling. And like, particularly like the label as a yoga teacher, like the things that kind of come alongside that.
Yeah, that's why I don't. Get rid of all the labels, all of them. Yeah, it's... And I definitely struggled with that at points, if I remember rightly now. You're just saying that. How people perceived you because you're teaching yoga versus like who you are and what they expect your behaviour should be. And I remember it was quite comical, actually. It was when I was in the Philippines and I was quite depressed, but teaching these classes in the morning, and it was kind of like this contrast. I would like put the face on, I would go and do it, and it was beautiful. I mean, all the noises of the jungle, you could just, it's lovely. But then at night time, I'm sat at the bar and I'm drinking red wine and I'm smoking Marlboro Lights. Just like, I'm like, if those pirates come back here, I'm going to take myself after them. Like, you know, just like all this fatalistic, nihilistic shit.
Yeah.
But this guy came up to me one night and he's like, you're the yoga teacher, you shouldn't really be doing that. And I literally just turned around and looked, like, if I could have said something, it would have been get the fuck out of my face. But it was just my body language and eyes that done it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
But it did get me thinking a lot. But then it's like I have felt like a fraud at times teaching yoga when I've been kind of really in these cycles of self-destructive negative behaviour. Because it's like, okay, I need to bring it back to the yamas and the yamas. So going straight to this, okay, this asana practice, and here I am, like, you know, sat in front of people. I'll go home, and then it's like this different life. So I can kind of see it and understand it. But then also it's like, as a yoga teacher, it's like I need to just like chill out and not take it so seriously. It's the people showing up and taking the time for themselves that cultivate their inner experience. We stand up there and maybe we have a nice energy we give to the room, or we say the right things or whatever, but ultimately
it's them doing the work.
It's them doing the work, and it's their experience. So I'm going to drink red wine and smoke Marlboro Lights if I want to. Thank you very much.
But I think the other thing as well that we have to, and I know that like a lot of the teachers that I particularly like surround myself with, we're all quite harsh on ourselves. And the other thing we have to remember is that the older, like ancient teachers, where their lineage has come from, they were like very much in a bubble. We're now exposed to all these different kinds of things within like the world, where it's like, again, the culture around like drinking or drugs or even social media, and there's always all this constant noise around, and it's really easy to like fall into those habits. Like I've also felt like a fraud. Like I haven't practiced asana for the longest time, and then I'm like, how can I then go teach people it? And it's a real, like, for lack of a better word, head fuck to deal with, and be like, wait, hang on. Or there's moments where I'm talking about like, you know, the practice can help you cultivate like more acceptance and, you know, less judgment towards yourself. I come home and then I have a bad like day with my like body dysmorphia and like eating disorder, and I'm like, oh, hang on. I can't take my own advice, but that just makes us fucking human. So absolutely, it's a really difficult one to kind of navigate and wrap your head around. But I think, again, going back to what we said earlier, it's all about your intention and your awareness with it, and the fact that you are analysing yourself and you're aware of it all speaks a lot more. You know, so
that's very sweet. I'll take it. But it's so true though, that taking your own advice, you know, and that's something I'm reflecting on a lot more lately, is things that I say, whether it be in a class or just in conversation with friends. You know, if a friend comes to me with anything, I'm like, you know, you're doing great, you know, you're a work in progress, you're evolving, and I mean it, you know, and I totally mean it. And I have had to kind of say to myself over the last few months, I'm like, you need a dose of that as well. And I have got a lot better. Those negative loops that would cycle around incessantly, you know, they're not there anymore. And I'd say that's the work with the mushrooms over the last year that's really helped to shift some of that. It's ahimsa, you know, that non-violence, thoughts, words, actions.
Absolutely.
Has to be the foundation.
It does. And that's like, again, as much as you say it to other people, you have to make time to say it back to yourself. And it's the hardest thing in the world to do, but it's so valuable.
Yeah.
So my question, with your mushrooms, how often do you take them? Do you, or is each kind of experience completely different depending what you get out of them?
Yes. Intention again. Intention is very important. I've done lots of work with mushrooms over the years in big stints as well. So when I was 21 and working in Laos, I spent a month on mushrooms every day. Wow, quite large quantities. But there was no intentionality with those experiences, but it was still incredible regardless. When I was in Canada, I'd done lots of work with mushrooms. I spent lots of time in nature, which is an experience in itself. Experiencing how our senses can expand on mushrooms is quite incredible. But specifically over the last year, I've taken mushrooms at home a lot, in large doses. I try microdosing, but I kind of buy a bag and then dose myself. My tendency is to for things to escalate, so never ends up microdosing. Then next thing I know, I'm walking through the village in Kemp Town with like some form of a poncho cape on and just having a great time. No, but it was there was lots of things that I had intended on seeing, confronting, working with. And it was incredible. I felt things release out of my body in the same way you get with your physical practice or in meditation, you know, and there was so much that released out of my neck, on my shoulders. It just kind of came pouring out of me. I had nights of just like sobbing, and I had another time where I felt like an animal. I was just, you know, the noises that were coming out of me, I felt like I was it was really powerful. And you can almost feel the mushroom energy, you know, in your physiology restructuring. And I had quite a few sessions out in Sheepcote Valley, just lying on the side of the valley with my hands and my feet in the earth and the sun shining, and just kind of giving over that surrender energy of, okay, I'm here, I'm, you know, help or restructure, do whatever you need. And it just is like happening, you know. But I'm very grateful, and I love working with mushrooms because there's that very strong sense that they're a conscious entity, you know, 100%. And there's that real sense of that when you're working with the mushroom, that they're not a person, but they're their own thing, and they know what they're doing, and they're here, and you know, you can interact with them, which is really nice.
So powerful. That's really interesting.
Love a mushroom.
I love a good old mushroom. So to kind of like wind down a little bit, I just wanted to finish off with 3 questions that I have for you, completely unrelated to yoga. They're just like random little ones for like personality. Nice. So my first one that I have for you, Holly, is, what would you say to your 13-year-old self?
I would say to take a deep breath in and out. Everything is going to be amazing. You're going to live your wildest dreams. You're going to travel, adventure, and just keep surprising yourself and keep growing into a person that you really like to spend time with. So
that's beautiful.
Yeah, my 13-year-old me was very sad, so it would be nice to say that to her.
To have someone about to say that. That's beautiful.
Oh,
okay. Maybe a little bit like emotional, not gonna lie.
Don't cry, or I'll cry with you.
Oh my god, don't. We're both like watery babies. Okay, so a bit more lighthearted. What would your final meal on earth be? Now, this is like your starter, your main, dessert, and a drink, and it can literally be anything, if it's homemade or from a restaurant.
Oh my
whatever.
God. Oh my God. Okay, I should probably have something with magic mushrooms to start with. Just so on that piece that I'm about to die. Am I getting the electric chair?
Yeah.
Have I done something really terrible? Okay, so some kind of like mushroom pate.
Nice.
And then what would I have for a main? Oh gosh, this is incredibly hard. Japanese food.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe some sashimi, really nice sushi.
Yes.
And then a cake. I need a cake.
Now, are you more of a like chocolate kind of person or like a fruit cake?
Oh, maybe a cheesecake.
A cheesecake.
Maybe a cheesecake.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Love his cheesecake. And I get a drink as well.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The choices.
Ayahuasca.
Yeah. You may as well have one final trip before you go.
Yeah, send me out the right way.
Yeah. Okay, 10 out of 10 meal. That's great. So, final question. If you could be anywhere in the world right now, where would you be? And why?
Oh, I have to say right here, right now, don't I?
Oh, so kind.
Okay, if I could be anywhere in the world right now, what month is it? Oh, it's August. Maybe I would be somewhere I've not been before. Maybe somewhere wild, like St. Petersburg. No, it's not a good place to be right now, is it? Oh, shit. Sorry. Cut that bit out. Right, where would I go right now? God, I don't know. Africa. I'd love to go to Africa, and I think that's my next. That will be my next adventure after going to India and Nepal next year. Beautiful. Africa is definitely somewhere I'd love to experience. I'd love to go there because I've not been. So I think to experience that culture and to have a culture shock again. You know, Asia's like home to me now, especially India and Central Asia. So to go somewhere and new smells, new colours, new cultures, new spirituality, new music, to see the nature as well, like especially Tanzania, Kenya, I'm really drawn there, Namibia, and then to see like Madagascar as well, Mozambique, to do some diving out there would be incredible. Yeah.
Okay.
Africa.
I love that. Yeah, let's go.
Where would you go right now?
Oh, where would I go? I'm really drawn right now to either. You know what? I really don't know. The world is so vast and there's so many places that I would love to go to. But I think what I'm really drawn to right now, because one of my friends has been there recently, is Sydney. Nice. And mainly because of like the beaches, and growing up, like I spent a lot of time watching like Bondi Rescue. Nice. Yeah. So it feels like a place that I kind of know already. And I just love to experience that beach, that strip, and see what it's like. Nice. Yeah, and because it's so far away. Yeah, you know what I mean. It'd be like, the trip would be worthwhile if I could just teleport there now.
Oh, that would be great. Sydney's a great city. Easy. Lots of fun.
Yeah, so that's where I would be. So to kind of finish off, Alex kindly said that you have a book on the way. Yeah. So what is it about?
Kind of a lot of what we've spoken about, really. Sick. The journey, the road to recovery, the healing. I went through serious bouts of suicidal depression in my early 20s. And I think in hindsight, a lot of those, you know, when it became really bad, was me coming off opiates and benzodiazepines. I never made the connection at the time. Wow. But it's been quite a journey. And we've touched on some of it today. I've written it all down, but I'm in the hard part now, which is the editing process. This is why we need to go climbing, because as I've mentioned before, I'm quite defeatist, and when things get hard, I go, it. I'll leave it. So it's the hard work time at the moment. But it's really nice. It's flowing beautifully. It's all coming together.
Have you got a title?
Not yet.
Okay.
I've played around with a few ideas, but I'm hoping as I kind of weave everything together, and especially iron out the latter chapters, which some are yet to be lived as it finishes. The book finishes in Everest Base Camp.
Amazing.
That something will come to me. And I've got 11 chapters. They're Fibonacci numbers, so I'm fascinated by all of that. And I like that the 11th Fibonacci is 55, so you got the 5-5 with the 11. And each chapter gets a little bit longer than the preceding chapter to kind of give that view back through time. You know, as you look back on your life, those, you know, the earlier chapters, it's kind of condensed. It's like you've gone so far from that experience that you can package it up or, you know, put a bow on it in a really nice way. And then as you move further away or more towards the present, it's like it all lengthens. You're still kind of processing through it, going through it. So yeah, lots of hard work, lots of me just mooching around the flat, type and paste and then type.
I love that.
So yeah, we'll see. A friend once said to me that I would finish the book in Canada.
Really?
And it felt like a prophecy moment, and I've had a few of those. So
okay,
we'll see. Maybe I'll be back in Canada in a log cabin somewhere.
Who knows?
Finishing it all up,
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, Holly, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I really enjoyed just
having me.
Thank you. No, thanks for coming and just sharing your incredible story. That's so very inspiring to me.
Aww.
Like, bean.
Aww.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It was an absolute pleasure. But thanks for joining, guys. Hope you enjoyed. As always, like, comment, subscribe, and there'll be more podcasts in the future. If you want to find Holly anywhere, I will leave all your links and just thingies in the description below. Nice. Yeah, wicked. See you soon.